Great.
All right.
We're ready.
Jack!
Rich
Jack,
Evans.
have you ever asked yourself what it would be like to run like the item shop inside a role-playing fantasy world? Well, Moonlighter by 11-Bit Studios asked that question, and then they basically ignored that they even asked it. 11-Bit Studios said, item shop management. That sounds like an interesting idea. Let's make a dungeon crawler.
They take... So first of all, the premise to this episode, Moonlighter versus Recettear.
Yes.
Is kind of, they're two games that have a very similar premise. One half dungeon crawler, one half item shop management.
And the focus is somewhere entirely different in either game.
That's very true, that's very true. So yeah, starting with Moonlighter.
Yeah, well, what are you talking about, Moonlighter? That seems to be your baby in this race. That's your horse.
That is clearly the Jack game.
Yeah.
Out of the two. Half of the game, you're crawling through dungeons, fighting monsters, and picking up loot. And the other half of the game is selling that loot in your item shop.
Yeah, very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Randomly generated Zelda dungeons. It's definitely the Zelda Binding of Isaac formula.
It's very Isaac. It feels very Spelunky.
But the premise of the game is there's this town, and this town is set up shop next to these mysterious dungeons, and the layout of the dungeons keeps changing, and their economy is based on getting shit out of these dungeons. You play as Will, who has inherited the shop, presumably from his parents, who I assume they have recently died.
Sure.
They're never seen nor mentioned.
Using some context clues, I'm going to guess they died in the dungeons.
Very possibly.
Because the old man keeps on saying, don't go in there.
Yeah, well, that kind of story aspect of the game, everything is woefully underdeveloped. Woefully.
I'm surprised they didn't shove that into the end with all the rest of the exposition. Yeah.
And I think this is very telling on the game in general.
Yeah.
This game where you run an item shop, and in this game, Will, he doesn't want to run an item shop. He wants to be a dungeon hero. And that's how the game treats running your shop, like something you don't really want to be doing.
Yes, almost to the detriment of the game.
Not almost. It is, no, I'm going to say flat out to the detriment of the game. The item... The shop management, they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't care about it. It feels tacked on. There is nothing to running your shop.
Right. I mean, it's not that it feels tacked on because the mechanics of running your shop. There are some good aspects to running your shop in Moonlighter.
Okay.
So basically you get all your items, and while you're in the dungeon, you only have so much backpack space, and so you have to kind of prioritize the items you keep versus the items that you kind of get rid of on site.
That's nice.
Oh yeah, really nice. And so then when you get back to your shop, you have to figure out how much things are worth. And there's no good guide to what items are going to cost, so basically you just have to guess. And then there's a little scale.
It's weird that it's a wild guess. There's no even hint to the value of something. I found that kind of irritating.
That could have... There's a lot of little pieces that are missing from Moonlighter. So yeah, like there's kind of a sliding scale. There is happy face with coin eyes, which means the people are getting a really great deal, which means you've underpriced it.
Yeah.
All the way to so expensive that they won't buy it.
And then there's sweet spot.
Yeah.
And once you're in the sweet spot, every time you put the item on the table, it goes to that price.
Yeah.
And there's no price fluctuation.
Right.
So once you figure out an item's price, you're done.
Yeah.
You just throw it on the table, and the game takes care of itself because the game doesn't care about running an item shop. The price for this is $125. Doop, doop, all game.
Yep. Yeah.
The game, I was really annoyed. The game flat out, the game tells you if you sell too many of an item, well, the price will go down. That never happens.
That never happened.
That never happened. I just, like, I went through, like, the second dungeon relatively quick, and by the time I got to the third, I stayed in the third dungeon for a while, because I wanted to earn money for some of the upgrades that I wasn't really needing or using for the shop. So I was selling the same shit a lot. Price never changed.
Nope.
Never changed.
And kind of no matter what, all items would be cleared from your shop at the end of the day. People bought it. Whatever you put out there, people bought. Yeah, I definitely agree. There were a lot of chunks missing from the game.
So my overall thoughts on Moonlighter.
Yeah.
It's an adequate dungeon crawler. It's an adequate dungeon crawler. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Some of the bosses maybe a little bit too easy. I got through 2 of them the first time I ever saw them. One, I was like woefully underprepared. I didn't have any health potions or anything on me, and it was fine.
Yeah.
But it's an adequate dungeon crawler. And then the other part of the game that's the interesting sounding part.
Yeah.
Everything about the shop feels just like a complete afterthought.
Even in as far as the premise to the game, Moonlighter.
Yeah.
I kept waiting for that push and pull. That like, oh, today I need to run the shop. And and maybe there's a downfall to running the shop instead of going into the dungeon.
There is no pressure in this game moving you forward whatsoever. Not even an in-game fictional story premise. Like, we gotta get this done. No.
Yeah.
There are no consequences to failure. If you die in the dungeon, you lose a few items. You just do it again the next day. You don't even have to open your shop, like, hardly ever.
Right.
All right, like, wouldn't it make sense in a game about running a business that you would have some kind of, I don't know, mortgage or loan to pay off at the end of every in-game month?
That would have been nice.
There's no operating cost.
How about this? You know what I kept on waiting for is, as someone who at one point in his life had to balance a real job versus a passion job, something like a health meter where it's like, if you spend too many nights in the dungeon, you're gonna lose some sleep, and maybe that means that your health is gonna be affected by it. So some nights, maybe you just have to sleep the whole night instead of going to do your passion job. Because some nights, you have to watch the shop, or some sort of discouragement. But no, every morning you run your shop, every night you go to the dungeon, then you go to your shop, then you go to the dungeon, and everything's fine.
For a game whose difficulty options are labeled, instead of like, easy, normal, and hard, they're labeled normal, hard, and very hard. For a game that wants to pretend it's difficult in their menu, it's very laid back. It's very laid back and easy experience. There's no real danger of failing. No. If you're having any kind of trouble, you just keep on grinding out till you get the better weapons and armor, and then you sail through it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of lame. I'm going to be honest with you. I was expecting a lot more from this game. Thematically, arty-farty wise.
Yeah.
I was expecting it to tell a little story through gameplay about the dangers of moonlighting, about the dangers of running a business and then trying to do your passion on the side.
It feels to me like they started. I think they had some of these ideas, and then they just kind of gave up. That's how it feels to me. Because you got the old guy who keeps warning you, oh, you're gonna get hurt. And then you got the kid who like really wants to, in his dialogue, he wants to explore the dungeon. I kept waiting for like you to inspire the kid to go into the dungeon, and then he goes in alone, then you gotta save the kid. No.
It feels like it could have used like 6 more months in the tube just to get some more ideas. I know this was a Kickstarter game.
Yeah.
And so perhaps there was just some pressure to release on time. Perhaps that's all they had. Like, I don't know, we got the basic ideas. And I'm talking really harshly about it, even though I very much enjoyed the game.
There's a lot to criticize.
There-
And what here's the thing,
There's a lot missing. Right?
There's a lot missing and there's a lot to criticize.
Yeah.
And the things that work, they're not really praiseworthy, it's just kind of adequate.
Yeah. Let me switch.
Go ahead.
Switch to praise gear, because in the dungeon, I feel like the combat is spot on. It's all very simple combat, and the only real danger is knowing the moves to your enemies. And once you know your enemies' moves, you feel very agile getting around in the dungeons.
Compared to other games that have dungeons, I don't know that it is that amazing.
It's good.
But compared to it's kind of different. They're more of twin stick shooters, but like Binding of Isaac, or Enter the Gungeon, or even old school Zelda dungeon crawling, like Link to the Past style. Compared to other dungeon games,
I really like the combat. I think the combat is very nice. I'm not going to say it's the greatest. I'm going to say it felt good.
It's less fluid Hyper Light Drifter.
I didn't play a ton of that.
If you want this game,
yeah.
Hyper Light Drifter already exists as a better version of this game.
I will say the biggest challenge for me in the dungeon was sorting my backpack.
Yeah.
And that is a bit of an issue.
And you know what? I think the backpack sorting made for kind of a neat puzzle.
It did.
It did, because there were things that had like weird item statuses. Like, you really want these gold bricks, but
Yeah.
the gold bricks, if you keep those in your backpack, will destroy whatever item is directly above it.
Yep.
So you really got to worry about where you position things in your backpack.
Certain things that just have to be on the edge, certain things need to be on the left, right, top. But I agree. That's a lot of fun. But that's where the challenge was. It wasn't in any of the enemies.
Right.
And I think that's a problem. I do think I think it's missing a lot of little pieces, but what's there is nice and pleasant, I think.
Yes, it's nice and pleasant, but I mean, here's the thing. There's nothing that stands out as amazing where I can say, aha! It's just, when it works, it's adequate.
Sure. I mean, I don't disagree. I liked a lot of the dungeon crawling. I wish there was a little more variety in the dungeons. You know, kind of shape, layout. I would have loved some like environmental dangers to add a little variety. Some spike traps, some a little more secrets. Like every floor of the dungeon has a little sparkly spot. And so if you keep your eye out, you can find a little secret in the pits and maybe a little extra treasure.
Those were neat.
Maybe a special treasure chest that teleports everything from your backpack back home so you can fill up your backpack again.
Basically double the stuff you get for that trip.
Awesome.
Or you can just go home and drop your shit off and go to the dungeon again, because there is no thing in the game that prevents you from doing that. It's fine. You can just do that whenever you want.
Yeah.
いらっしゃいませ。いくらにしようかな。いくらにしようかな。ありがとうございました。売れたよ。
You brought up to me that you wanted to stream this role-playing-ish kind of game where you ran an item shop, and I thought, oh, Recettear. And you looked at me like I was from Mars.
I did. I did.
And then I told you about this game I was familiar with, Recettear,
Yeah.
from way back in the distant past.
10 years ago.
2007.
Yeah.
I actually read this about it. It was the first Japanese indie game on Steam.
Yes.
So, it is a game where you play as this girl, and her father has just recently died, and he left her. He saddled her with his debt.
Just like in real life.
Yes.
Very true to life.
This comically large loan.
Yes.
And so that she has to pay this loan back by turning her house into an item shop. And unlike Moonlighter, Recettear, I think it's either Recettear or Recettear. It's, you know what? Either way, it's fine.
Either way is fine.
But Recettear or Recettear really focuses on running the damn shop. That's the game's priority. The first major difference is that loan that you have to pay back is constantly lighting a fire under your ass.
It really is. And
Every week in game, you have to pay off part of your debt, and in a smart move, every week it keeps getting exponentially more the amount you have to pay. So like the difficulty curve in something, like in a lot of time in like a game where you're building up your business,
Yeah.
you start steamrolling at some point. And Recettear offsets this because that weekly payment keeps really fucking ballooning.
yeah.
And for the whole game, I was like, near the end of that week, I was really worried about whether or not I had enough money to make it. So there's the pressure element that keeps the driving you forward.
It does. Well, it actually, unlike Moonlighter, Recettear has a hurdle to jump over.
It has a fail state.
Yes.
Recettear has a fail state.
Absolutely. In Moonlighter, I was moving around. Like, I was stopping a thief. I was adjusting the price. But because of the difficulty curve, it felt like I was almost on cruise control.
Yeah.
Whereas in Recettear, because of their sales system, Recettear has this system where a customer comes up to you with an item, it has a suggested price, and then you need to figure out if you can get a little more for it or if you have to sell it for a little less.
You haggle.
So in Moonlighter, it felt like the store days were almost on cruise control. Whereas in Recettear, you got a manual transmission and you're kind of riding the throttle. You know, like you're playing the game like, oh, I know this item's hot right now. I bet I could get 135%. Oh, this item's not so hot right now. You know, there's things to do in Recettear, even though I was moving more in Moonlighter physically. In Recettear, I felt like I was gaming more.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense.
こうしてかわいそうな少女は世間の厳しさに負けたのでした。とほほだよ。
Running your shop and adjusting the prices, that's a constant thing throughout the game.
Yeah.
And there's more depth to the system than you'd think.
Oh, yeah.
You can haggle with the people. A lot of times you can get up to like 130% price for that thing, right? But
yeah.
not everybody has the same budget to work with. Some people, like, you know, they'll ask you to suggest an item for them.
Yeah.
You can suggest something that's just way too expensive for them, and they won't be able to buy it at all.
Right.
Some people you can kind of figure out, like, I can always get 130% for this item out of that person. But I have discovered if you just want to run an efficient business, sometimes maximizing that individual item price isn't always the best deal. There's a long-term strategy in Recettear, Jack, where you undercut them in price a bit. Like, I mean, you not undercut them. You know what? 105% off the normal value. I just raise the price. I'll only get like a 5% profit on that. But over time, you build up a reputation with them, and they just buy things that are more expensive. So, I mean, it's like a short-term gain. Like, do I want the 130, or am I playing the long game? Recettear has a long game.
Basically, to keep with our car theme, sometimes you got to slow down so you can go into the fast lane. That's me driving.
を置こうかな。
Recettear, on the storefront level, has a really neat it has a trend system.
Yeah.
And so, every so often, a little bell will go off and you'll get a little news alert. And the news alert says, hey, today weapons are not hot. No one's buying weapons right now. So that's when, as a shop owner, you go over to the Merchants Guild, you take up all the weapons you can afford and sit on them. You don't put them out in your shop, you wait. So then the next day when it says weapon prices have normalized, then you shove them all out there. Or
You're really playing the long game.
weapon prices are hot today, get them all out there. And then when someone comes up and wants a weapon, you can get up to 135, 138% inflation, plus the inflation you get because you bought them at a cheaper price. There's a really... That part of Recettear is really great. Running your shop on that level.
Yeah.
And especially when you get into the later shops, you got a vending machine, you got this, you got that. There was exactly 1 week in Recettear where I felt fantastic. Like, I had invested in a ton of, I think metal items were cheap.
Yeah.
Gobbled up all the metal items I could, but then prices weren't going up and my payment was due and I was close. Like, customers were coming in asking me to like buy stuff off of them, because that's another part of Recettear is just like in any RPG, the adventurer can sell their stuff at the item shop.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out sometimes, I'll buy this, I'll do this. So I was riding that line like, I might not make it. And then just the day before my bill was due, metal items are hot today. Shove it all out, making all the money. It felt great. But then after that, I had so much money, it just didn't matter. I was on cruise control.
Well, the game is smart enough to be relatively short. I mean, you can play on after you finish paying off the debt, but I mean, there's kind of a designated ending.
Yeah.
And so the game's smart enough to end when it knows you're going to be really snowballing.
Yeah.
So, it worked for me.
拾ったよ。
You can play Recettear quite successfully and never even set foot in the game's dungeons, which I will admit kind of suck.
The dungeons totally suck.
I'm not gonna pretend they're amazing. That's not why I played the game.
It's surprising to me that the dungeons, I guess they're in their early game as kind of a way to bolster your inventory, because you don't have a ton of capital to start with.
Well, the nice thing about items you get from the dungeon, if you can really maximize a dungeon trip and get lots of good items, you're not paying anything for those items. It's pure. Everything you get out of a dungeon is almost 100% pure profit.
Oh yeah, you have to pay like 1,000 picks to get a hero to go with you, and then, so like you.
That's another thing I like, by the way.
Yeah.
You're an item shop manager. You are not an adventurer. You hire somebody else to get your shit out of the dungeon.
Oh yeah, no, and the dungeons had a lot of good ideas. Like, for example, if you fail a dungeon, you lose everything except for 1 item.
And unlike Moonlighter, that fucking hurts. That fucking hurts because you got that debt.
Well, because like going to a dungeon takes time out of your sales day. You can't go at night. Like, that takes up half of your day to go to a dungeon. You better get some fucking good shit.
And when you fail there, it hurts your pocketbook. In Moonlighter, it's just like, I'll go back in. I'll just go right back in. It's fine.
The only downside is actually being in the dungeon is a grinding, miserable experience. Fighting monsters is crazy lame. The actual fighting is some of the worst. It's like throwing a bag of bricks at a burglar. It just feels dumb and useless, and everything is bad. And even to go beyond that, your adventurers come into your shop and buy stuff from you. Like, let's say your adventurer wants a sword that is a significantly better sword than the one you have. You want them to buy that, so when they go into the dungeon next, they have the nice sword, so you don't want to charge them too much because you really want them to buy it.
I know.
The only problem, like, that's a really great idea, but you don't need to go into the dungeon at all, so it never matters. I was, by the middle of week 2, I just stopped going to the dungeons, and it was a far easier game. You don't need to go into the dungeons.
You don't need to, no, but I had some pretty profitable dungeon runs. It's an item shop game, Jack. Pure profit on that shit.
The combat mechanics were so poor, and I was making so much money just, riding the ups and downs of the curves of buying stuff from the Merchant Guild. The dungeon is pointless. The dungeons were an afterthought in Recettear.
But here's the thing, it's an item shop game. The dungeons are supposed to be an afterthought.
Fine.
You know what?
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
You know what my conclusion to this episode is? I can just jump straight through it. Here's my conclusion.
Yeah.
If you take Recettear and you graft on Moonlighter's dungeon, you have a perfect item shop game. You now have the perfect item shop game.
Ooh. Just the dungeon.
Just the dungeons.
Well, and you'd have to physically, reach in and remove every speck of anime bullshit that's in Recettear, because that was annoying.
ああ。なんですって？なんだよ。なんで私が？
Some of the bad stuff for Recettear.
Oh yeah, there's bad stuff. I'm not saying it's perfect.
A crap ton of anime bullshit.
It's stuff you can't even excuse because, well, it's 11 years old. Menus weren't that fucked up 11 years ago. Button layouts weren't that fucked up 11 years ago.
Super fucked up. The same 5-second music loop blaring wasn't that fucked up 5 years ago.
Oh, see, I'm Rich Evans. I usually play games with the sound turned down so I can listen to something else. I didn't even notice.
Oh, you need it because
Yep.
every sound effect when you're in the dungeon. It was like one of those shitty like kung fu movies where they use the same punching sound effect 100 times in a row.
I was probably listening to a no-clip documentary.
That's the smart call, because those are great documentaries. No, oh God, no! Every sound in here was awful. The music was terrible. Their voice acting was grating.
I thought some of the dialogue was adorable. I don't know if somebody was having fun with the translation. I don't know how capitalism ho translates from Japanese. But capitalism ho is adorable.
Great. That was great. I loved some of I don't know if they were like mistranslations or again if they were just having fun.
Yeah.
So some of the times someone would come in to sell something and the translation would read, "This is a family heirloom," and my grandmother said only to sell it if I really needed it, but it was like a candy apple.
Right.
Agreed. Very fun. There was some fun stuff, but overall, the recycling of a lot of the audio assets was just the worst.
Okay. You know what? If we're doing a review, I should not turn off the music instantly. I'll keep that in mind in the future.
Keep that in mind. Obviously,
it's just the way I game. It's just what I do.
Well, and doing it this time was for the betterment. Like maybe that's why you enjoyed it so much. But
I think it's obvious. I like Recettear a lot. For the sake of criticizing it.
yeah.
Just some of the menu and button layout is just fucked. Why? In what sane world is L1 the settings menu? The first night I played this game, I got like a good week and a half deep into the game, and I hit the start button. Well, I should save this game. So I hit the start button. Oh, nothing's happening. How do I save? I can't find a save. I guess there's an autosave. And I turned it off. And the next day I went and turned it on. Whoops. There was no autosave. The save menu, the save option was hidden under the L1 button.
To be fair, yes, everything is fucked. So here's a to be fair and still a criticism. Is when you open this game through Steam, you get two options to open it. One is just to play the game, and two is to go into the configuration menu. And in the configuration menu, you can reassign buttons to your controller.
The configuration's like some kind of weird separate file, too. Isn't that weird?
It's super weird. Well, I mean, this is a 10-year-old game.
But games 10 years ago weren't doing that shit. That's like a 30-year-old game.
いらっしゃいませ。いくらにしようかな。ありがとうございました。買ったよ。
Did you ever notice the merchant experience combo thing that was going on?
Yeah, and I don't know why.
Oh yeah, no. If you offered like a number of people items in a row without having to haggle, that's a good price. You got the just price. You get the first time you get like 2 points, and the next time you did it in a row without having to haggle, it was 4, and it would double up. So it was like a little mini game just to make your shop days more gamey.
Sure.
Where you wanted to get that combo meter high to get more and more experience for your merchant experience level.
Yep.
It just lets you unlock more shit in the shop, so you can sell more shit and redecorate your shop, change the atmosphere, so maybe it's a little bit richer and richer people will come into your shop. There's just a lot to this game.
I agree. Like, there is a lot of good in the base shop management.
Yeah.
Like, there is a lot of neat stuff. I loved that as I was getting into my final week, and as the shop was really picking up. I was selling items for 30,000, 40,000 picks, and just really raking in the money. How they suddenly threw a wrench into that. And someone was coming in trying to sell me wallpaper for like 1 billion picks. I was like, whoa. And then you have to just take a step back going, wait, am I buying this or am I selling this? Do I have this in my shop?
That's another thing I'm going to criticize.
Yeah.
It's not always entirely obvious whether or not the item that you're haggling over, if it's something they're trying to buy from you or something they're trying to sell you. You have to pay attention.
You have to really pay attention to every time they speak to you because, after a while, you're kind of on cruise control for a little bit, and the game does punish you for that. Go, wait, I just lost that money?
Right.
Yes. I do wish...
That needs to be a little bit more obvious.
What I think is, in the little bubble, it says, how much should I pay? And
yes.
I think when it's in yellow, that's when... I am buying it.
It's not super obvious until you see you've played it a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the customer says, how much should I pay? And when I buy something, it says, how much should I pay? And only when it's in yellow does it mean that I, the merchant, not I, the customer. Yes.
Yeah, that's fair. That's another fair criticism.
It needs a little elbow grease here and there to remove some of the frustration. But, I mean, like I said, I think, Moonlighter kind of gave me an overall, okay experience. And with Recettear, I had one really great high as a merchant, but then it was a lot of muddly bullshit.
Moonlighter's a lot more casual.
Yeah.
Which, isn't necessarily a horrible thing. It's easier just to, I want to play something for a bit. I'll turn on Moonlighter and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll take 10 minutes. I'll go through a dungeon.
But overall, I find Moonlighter to be the less compelling experience.
I can agree with that.
Okay.
I can agree with that. I think if your anime tolerance meter is high enough,
for me, it's shocking.
I'm really surprised.
To the point where I was able to get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot. You're a little anime girl and you have a little anime fairy that helps you out. and there's a lot of whining. But of course, you didn't listen to any of it, so.
Yeah, I didn't.
That's why you were able to.
I wasn't hearing much of the dialogue. No.
そうかな。ここでいいかな。
In general, as a criticism to both of them, I would have loved a little more shop customization. In Moonlighter, you can do almost no shop customization, like you can put a picture on your wall that gives you 10% more money.
Yeah.
In Recettear, you can move stuff around, you can change the floor, you can change the wallpaper. I would have loved a little more customization. It didn't feel like my shop. I would have loved to, maybe like draw a path that customers could go through, or just like one
Like
of the,
IKEA.
right? Like one of the things in Moonlighter, you had a sale bin, right?
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be neat if you could like make a walking path so customers had to go buy the sale bin while they were waiting in line, just like they do in real stores, like like an impulse buy item bin. That would have been neat. And even in Recettear, you can change a bunch of cosmetic stuff. I never did because I was making enough money. I didn't want to spend money. I don't want to spend money on wallpaper.
You could spend money. Recettear is all about spending money to make money.
Yeah.
Recettear just embraces your old business standard: buy low, sell high.
Yeah.
And the decorations do affect the atmosphere of your store, because that's another thing, like plain, gaudy, light, dark, and at a certain spot you get better customers that come in.
Yeah, and I didn't change anything ever.
Yeah.
I upgraded my store to get a bigger store, but I never changed anything, and I didn't really notice a difference.
Okay.
So.
"お店開けますよ。いらっしゃいませ。これですよ、これ。いくらにしようかな。いくらにしようかな。ありがとうございました。売れたよ。いらっしゃいませ。いくらにしようかな。ありがとうございました。買い取ったよ。
Recommendations.
Recommendations. I think you have a perfect item shop game if you can just graft on Moonlighter's dungeon crawling directly onto Recettear, or Recettear, or however it's supposed to be pronounced.
Yeah.
You have the perfect game. Otherwise, if the idea of running a shop intrigues you, you're not going to get anything out of Moonlighter. Recettear or Recettear, whatever, really, really focuses on that. But Moonlighter is a fine, casual dungeon crawler.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd give both of these the Steam sale recommendation. It's a short game, and it's a game that doesn't have a ton of depth, Moonlighter.
Yeah.
And
Which you might be in the mood for something like that. It's a fine thing.
Absolutely.
It's a fine thing.
And Recettear is a game that can get very annoying at some times, but is a decent shop management sim.
Yeah. I think that's it.
I think so. I really like the music in Moonlighter. Did you listen to that?
I'm Rich Evans.
It's good music.